It's a good Ag AM in Kansas morning. Good morning. Let's take a look and see what's coming up today. First, Dr. Ignacio Ciampiti shares his tips on planting practices for the upcoming season. Next, grad student Chelsea Alquist talks about her mare's tail research project. Then Dr. Doug Jardine discusses the wide swings in soybean diseases each year. And Dr. Chris Blevins and Dr. Beth Davis talk about the causes and treatment for your horse's cough. We'll end today with a description of genetic traits required to contribute quality through the beef production chain. Closed captioning brought to you by Ag Promo Source. Together we grow. Learn more at agpromosource.com. This segment brought to you by Kansas Regenerative Medicine. Your stem cells, your health, your life.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Ignacio Ciampiti. I'm a cropping system specialist at K-State. Today we are in one of our soybean schools. We have 4 schools around the state, and this is one of the schools that is covering the Central East section of the state. We have very different topics, but today I want to focus on key tips on planting practices for the next coming growing season. When you're looking about what are the best conditions and planting practices for the next season, a couple of things that we need to take into account. Getting the seed into a right soil moisture and temperature. Those are really extremely important. Second one is just to make sure that we check planting depth. I mean, planting too deep or planting too shallow might be just also penalizing, and we will not get those plants coming at the same time. Third point is checking on the seeding rates. I mean, take a look to see what seeding rates we used from previous year, what are the recommendations based on the yield goals and based on the information of our local extension office. And another of key points that we are looking is about making sure that we have very good uniformity and preparation of the soil. Last year, based on the weather, we didn't have good soil conditions at planting, so we were paying really costly those situations. And the way that we pay was plants that they were not standing in the field, lack of uniformity, plants that they were coming late, and we have crusting. So really be careful about this. And if you need to wait even for a week just to make a planting into much better situations, is probably one of the sound advice. And make sure that we get those seeds into a right soil conditions. When you're looking about other factors that you should be considering, for soybean, inoculation is a key factor. Sometimes we are not seeing responses to inoculation, but when we are looking about the cost of the inoculants and the situation that we are facing, if we are not really getting a good inoculation practice, we know that this is kind of a pain for kind of an insurance, on our crops. So proper inoculation is key for soybean. And then some questions about row spacing we have in the past, people using 10 inches, 15 or 30 inches. I will say, we always like to try different things. We have a big project that we conducted last year with different farmers, and we tried 15 versus 30 inch. We are seeing very good responses, on 3, 4, 5 bushel response, on 15 inches on narrow rows, only in situations that we have good weather conditions. One of the things that narrow rows really helped us last year was on weed control. So if you are thinking about how to cover your canopy and how to control weeds, going into narrow rows in some situations can produce a very good benefit from minimizing input costs. So for next growing season, just in summary, think about going back to basics, taking care of basic steps and tips as soil temperature, right moisture, seed selection, narrow rows, inoculation, and then think about not only just getting to these maximum yields for your area, but also think about how much and how it will cost you to get to those yields. Think about efficiency, and then think about using all the inputs that are the basic inputs that we need for soybean production. In that way, I think that we will be able to still, row in these situations, that they are not really good economic situations, but still we will get benefits, on maximizing profits, but minimizing the input cost.
Heinen Brothers, a 4th-generation Northeast Kansas farm family, knows how tough farming can be. Farmers helping farmers. Heinen Brothers Ag, selling and servicing crop protection products, fertilizer, anhydrous ammonia, cover crops, quality aerial and ground application. Call today to learn about our extended term financing program. 800-760-4964. HeinenBrothersAg.com.
Grain sorghum is one of the most important cereal crops worldwide, and Kansas leads the nation in its production. Over the years, sorghum has been either exported, used in animal feed domestically, or for other industrial uses. Recently, its use in the ethanol market has seen tremendous growth, with 30% of domestic sorghum typically going to ethanol production. Kansas Grain Sorghum is committed to sorghum research, market development, and education. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org.
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
Valley Vet Supply.
This segment brought to you by Kansas Farm Bureau, the voice of agriculture. To join today or for more information, go to kfb.org or find us on Facebook and Twitter.
So my name is Chelsea Alquist. I am a graduate student at Kansas State University working in the agronomy department, looking at weed science. So one of my projects is mainly looking at mare's tail, when it emerges in eastern Kansas and when it's bolting. The reason for that is that we're looking at when is it mostly coming up, because it can emerge in either the fall or the spring, so that we can give producers an idea of when is the best time for them to put on applications of herbicide, or what are the best control measures. And then bolting timing is important too, because after mare's tail has bolted, which is basically that transition from vegetative stage into its flowering stage, it's much harder to kill once it has bolted. So I've only had 1 year's worth of study on that so far, but from what I've seen in eastern Kansas, most of mare's tail is coming up in the fall. It is bolting about mid to late April is when it's usually bolting. It seems to be about the same time across the state. A lot of that is due to the day length period, is when that plant is sensing when to switch over into that flowering stage. So kind of from that, we've kind of determined that maybe some better ideas for controlling that mare's tail is you're wanting to make sure that you are applying a pre in the fall, because if you're wanting to keep it from coming up, or make sure that you get on some post prior to bolting. So sometime in late March, early April, kill off those rosettes before they bolt in the spring. Some other ideas. Mare's tail does very well in tillage or in no-till situations. So any kind of tillage will really help to keep those from coming up. The seeds are very small, so even burying them just a little bit is going to keep them from emerging. Mowing is not going to help. A lot of those rosettes, they're actually going to, if you cut them off, they're going to branch out and they're going to form new flowers off of that after they've been cut.
Next time you see a beautiful field of corn, reach out and thank the farmers who work tirelessly to raise corn for livestock feed, renewable fuels, and exports to feed a growing world population. The farmers on the Kansas Corn Commission work for Kansas Corn with grower-funded checkoff dollars that support foreign and domestic market development, research, promotion, and education to expand opportunities for Kansas farmers. To learn more, visit kscorn.com. Buying a car shouldn't be this hard. And at Brown Chevrolet Buick in Wamego, it isn't. It's actually awesome. Whether you want a new or used car or truck, Toby's team can make the deal. Even if you want to custom order a new car or truck, Toby's team can make the deal. See Toby's team at Brown Chevrolet Buick in Wamego. We're awesome.
Ag AM in Kansas, brought to you in part by Kansas Corn. Learn more at kscorn.com.
I'm Doug Jardine, and I'm the Extension Row Crops Specialist at Kansas State University. And today I'll be talking about soybean diseases. And one of the things I'm going to make a point with the growers is that there can be large swings in the amount of specific diseases from year to year based on weather. For instance, in 2014, there's a soybean disease called sudden death syndrome. It's probably the worst we've ever seen it in Kansas. 1 year later in 2015, it was very difficult to find. So one of the things we'll do today is talk about what causes some of those differences. A couple of other things that I'm going to be emphasizing is soybean cyst nematode. That remains the #1 soybean pest in the entire United States. And on a year-to-year basis, it's probably, if not the first or second most important pest here in Kansas. Because of our drier climate in summer, there's another soybean disease called charcoal rot that can also be very devastating with regard to yield loss. But today we're going to give the growers a fair amount on soybean cyst nematode. The varieties they're currently using have resistance genes in them, but what we've observed in recent years is that resistance is starting to deteriorate, and so that those varieties aren't performing the way they did maybe 5 or 10 years ago. And quite honestly, many of the growers aren't aware of that, so we're going to try and bring them up to speed on that. One of the other things we'll talk about today are foliar diseases. There's been a large push in recent years by the chemical companies to apply foliar fungicides even in the absence of disease. Most university extension specialists think that's probably not a good idea for a couple different reasons. One, we've not been able to measure the significant yield gains that would pay for that application, and two, we are worried about fungi developing resistance to the fungicides, and we've already seen that happen over in the Mississippi River Valley with a disease called frog eye leaf spot, which is present in Kansas, and so we want to make sure that doesn't develop. I think with regard to efficiencies, that really comes into play with the fungicides. A lot of them are using that as insurance, particularly when prices were higher, so obviously when prices are lower, that's probably something that they should be taking a strong look at. But the bottom line is, if there's disease there, they need to go out and treat, and the economics will be there, the returns will be greater than the cost. But if the disease isn't there, then they just need to keep the money in their pockets. And then the last topic we'll talk about today are soybean seedling diseases and seed treatments. In years when we have very wet conditions immediately after planting, they can cause significant yield losses. We have kind of a 7-year rolling average that we can gain almost 2.5 bushels per acre by the use of the seed treatment. And there's lots of different choices out there, so today we're going to try and sort those things out for the producers. The other thing with efficiencies is, again, is seed treatment. I think we've demonstrated over the last 20 years in not only research here in Kansas, but across the soybean belt, that seed treatments are a very cost-effective measure, keeping in mind that in years when we have delayed planting, like we did in 2015, at some point, just because the soils are so much warmer and germination is so much more rapid, that may be a place where they could cut costs. We don't often see big differences in yield responses in June-planted soybeans through seed treatment, but with the cost of the high-tech seeds, some growers still view that as reasonably priced insurance. We don't necessarily discourage that, but that could be a place where they could look a little bit this year to cut costs.
I'm a patient of Kansas Regenerative Medicine in Manhattan. I had stem cell therapy in my hips and my left knee. My wife and I both are patients. We went down there the same day in November. Since then, my hips are feeling a lot better. I can work now most of the day if I want to. And before, if I worked in the morning, I was done in the afternoon, or if I worked in the afternoon, I was sure enough done for the rest of the day.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
This segment brought to you by Heinen Brothers Ag, farmers helping farmers by offering quality aerial and ground application, fertilizer, ag chemicals, and anhydrous ammonia. Call today to protect your crop yield.
Hello and welcome to Horsing Around. I'm Dr. Chris Blevins at Kansas State University Veterinary Health Center, today joined by Dr. Beth Davis. Welcome.
Thank you.
Dr. Davis is a professor here in the equine section and head of the equine section here at Kansas State Veterinary Health Center. Today, I think would be a great aspect and topic to talk about just the horse that is coughing, and maybe even causes of a horse that would cough would be a good place to start, because horses are traveling and there's a lot of horses around potentially coughing, and maybe some issues with that. So what would be some causes of horses to cough?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question, and one that certainly is relevant at this time of year, because we do hear them do that. So I think as horse owners and as horse professionals, we all know that horses are going to cough here and there. So an occasional cough, really, we probably can brush off, not a huge deal. I think where we get concerned is where we have a horse that continues to cough, or perhaps even a horse that isn't quite themselves and has a cough to go along with it. So we often break that cough down into, do you think that it is a result of infectious disease versus non-infectious disease? And so when we talk about things like infectious disease, we might be talking about something like a respiratory infection with a bacteria or perhaps a virus. So things like a fever that might go along with it, which could result in the horse being a little bit not themselves, and maybe they need some treatment. So maybe we need to take a closer look and have a veterinarian take a peek.
Okay. And then as far as, so we kind of talked a little bit about that of infectious, what would be even some, I guess, non-infectious causes of coughing?
Sure, absolutely. So that would be the horse that they kind of seem like themselves. Maybe they're not quite right, but basically doing okay, but you do hear this cough. And sometimes that's going to be with exercise. Sometimes it's not even with exercise. You just see them at rest or out in the pasture by the round bale and they've got some cough. And so when we talk about non-infectious respiratory disease and a cough, we think about things like maybe what we call inflammatory airway disease, where we have some inflammation of the lower airways, or we can even have a horse that has what we call recurrent airway obstruction, or many horse people are familiar with the term of heaves.
Okay.
And often those break down into a little bit of an age-related problem. So we more commonly see that inflammatory airway disease in the young performance horse that's out and working. More commonly see recurrent airway obstruction, or a horse that has heaves, as maybe a mature to even a little bit older type horse.
Those are good points, because I think in some horses that are out there and they're showing them, they're thinking maybe it's heaves. It could be, but the other thing would be, based on those things and getting maybe some further diagnostics, and obviously consult with their veterinarian on a lot of those. What would be some potential, I guess, kind of quickly, what would be some treatments or things that maybe the owner should be thinking about to help with those non-infectious type issues?
Yep. Another really good point. Again, I agree with you. I think that when we've got that horse that has a persistent cough and we're trying to work through that, really good time for us to go ahead and have a veterinarian come out, make sure there's not anything underlying that's infectious, because sometimes that does require things like antibiotics. But if we're sure that they do have non-infectious, just airway inflammation, and maybe it's a young horse with IAD, often working with their veterinarian for things like anti-inflammatories. And those anti-inflammatories might include things like corticosteroid therapy. And we often are going to do that in combination with if there's any sort of trigger in the environment. Because sometimes what happens is they maybe had flu or they had rhinopneumonitis, a little bit of a viral infection, they got over that, now they have some persistent inflammation, and maybe they're staying indoors because of weather conditions, or maybe they live in a pen with a round bale and they've got some dust exposure, and that makes things a little bit worse. So often it's going to be maybe some medications that the veterinarian can prescribe along with some environmental changes. And that's true with our older horse that has heaves as well. I think many of us are familiar with that situation, but trying to minimize dust, try to have really clean hay or even grass pasture as an ideal forage source, and then working with the veterinarian on the optimal medications that that horse should be receiving.
I think that's all great points, and I sure appreciate that, Dr. Davis. And I think that the biggest point to even take home would be consult with your veterinarian if you have any issues with your horse coughing, so you can kind of figure those things out. And again, if you have any other questions, just give us a call here at Kansas State Vet School, and maybe Dr. Davis or one of the other specialists in internal medicine here at the Veterinary Health Center can help you with that. I'm Dr. Chris Blevins with Horsin' Around, and we'll see you around.
Hello friends, I'm Ernie Rodina.
And I'm Dawn Dawson with the Better Horses Radio Show.
For over 9 years, we've been bringing the Better Horses Radio Show to markets all across the Midwest. We talk about God, lots about horses.
We talk about cows, we talk about horse health, we talk to top trainers, and we even talk about Roy Rogers.
We are having a blast with Better Horses Radio Show and would love to take it to a market near you.
So visit our website at betterhorsesradio.com and let us or your local radio station know you'd like to hear it in your area.
The Better Horses Radio Show is unbelievable.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
Soil is the life of a farm, and for 25 years, SureCrop Liquid Crop Nutrition has helped growers produce abundant quality crops while preserving and improving the soils they steward. SureCrop offers complete soil and plant analysis with cropping recommendations, delivery direct to your on-farm storage, and quality crop nutrition custom blended for your field. Choose SureCrop for the assurance of excellence for your soil. Call today or visit their website for more information.
Kansas Farm Bureau, the voice of agriculture, represents grassroots agriculture. The state's largest and most powerful farm organization stands up for its members through leadership development, agriculture education, legal defense, environmental advocacy, farm safety, and risk management. Members also enjoy money-saving benefits. To join our organization today or to learn more, go to www.kfb.org or find us on Facebook and Twitter.
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
Valley Vet Supply.
Ag AM in Kansas is brought to you in part by SureCrop, liquid crop nutrition delivered right to your farm.
An ideal beef steer is one you can profitably produce again and again to earn premiums on a value-based grid. Paul Dykstra crunched the numbers and says the perfect animal would make a 900-pound certified Angus beef prime yield grade 2.9 carcass.
We've gone from 60% to 70% choice in the last 10 years, which is very rapid improvement, particularly as we look at history where for decades we saw really no change whatsoever prior to that point. The packer is willing to pay us for carcasses that are better than average. So if 70% is the average, we're left with the remaining 30% of the choice select spread. The packer is willing to pay us for each choice carcass. As a result, that's a little bit smaller share than we would have had just a few years ago of the choice select spread. So we've got to add to that with, again, shooting for the certified Angus beef brand target as well as prime, and quite frankly, having well-rounded all-purpose cattle in the feed yard and on the rail.
The target feeding numbers would include a feed-to-gain conversion at 5.6 and gain 3.8 pounds per day as a calf fed. The industry-wide gain ratio is 6.2, so just making that improvement in conversion saves more than $50.
The idea of the perfect steer, I think, is quite universal across the United States in our production environments. Granted, we may start with a different package with different challenges in terms of our genetic selection that we must maintain given those different environmental constraints. But in the end, we can probably find bulls that will fit our operation, even give us replacement heifers that are very suited to our environment, that also have higher levels of marbling, for instance, larger ribeye size and better overall feed yard performance as well, that come out of a package that is still very suitable to those different environments. So it's an equal opportunity thing.
Aim high, even higher than you might think you need to. Dykstra suggests a goal of 60% CAB acceptance with 10 to 20% prime on top.
That's really going to boost our economic return much more than, say, getting 100% choice carcasses. We simply need to ask more out of our cattle to get more out of the market in today's environment.
I'm Bob Cervera.
Closed captioning brought to you by Ag Promo Source. Together we grow. Learn more at agpromosource.com. To see this show and past episodes of Ag AM in Kansas, go online to agamInKansas.com.